There are some books in science fiction that force you to wrestle with them. Starship Troopers by Robert A. Heinlein is one of those books. Now, whether you love it, hate it, or fall somewhere in between, this novel forces you to engage with its ideas. And if you've only ever seen the Starship Troopers movie, buckle up, because this book is a completely different beast.
To fight for the future.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part too.
This is a novel that has sparked decades of debate. Is it an exploration of duty, sacrifice, and civic responsibility? A glorification of militarism? A thought experiment on who should wield political power? Or is it just a damn good military sci-fi novel about badass space marines and powered armor blasting giant alien bugs? Maybe it's all of the above. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's break it down. At its core, Starship Troopers follows Johnny Rico.
Let me tell you something. I'm from Buenos Aires, and I say kill them all!
Yeah! Oh yeah! Yeah! Oh yeah!
A privileged kid from a wealthy background who enlists in the mobile infantry of the Terran Federation. He doesn't just join out of some deep sense of duty, but mostly on a whim. What starts as a spur-of-the-moment decision to impress a girl, relatable, turns into a brutal journey through military training, combat, and eventually command.
You don't do your job, I'll kill you myself. Do you get me?
We got you, sir!
But here's the twist. In this future society, military service isn't just a job. It's the only path to full citizenship. You want to vote? You want to have a say in how the world is run? You have to earn it through service. The Federation's philosophy is simple. Only those who have proven they are willing to put the needs of the collective above their own personal interests deserve a voice in shaping the future. According to Heinlein's world, military service isn't just about conquest or personal glory. It's a test of character. Rico's journey from an uncertain recruit to a dedicated officer is the framework for Heinlein's exploration of militarism, discipline, and civic virtue.
What's the moral difference, if any, between a civilian and a citizen?
A citizen accepts personal responsibility for the safety of the body politic, defending it with his life. A civilian does not.
And despite the novel's reputation as a high-action sci-fi war story, a significant portion of the book is spent in classrooms and training camps, where instructors like Mr. Dubois hammer home the philosophical and moral justifications for the Federation's way of life. The battles with the arachnids, the alien bugs that humanity is at war with, serve as the backdrop, but the real war is ideological. Heinlein is asking, who deserves power, and what is the price of freedom? One of the most striking aspects of Starship Troopers is its unflinching embrace of militarism, not just as a tool of survival, but as a moral crucible. The mobile infantry isn't just a fighting force. It's a proving ground for those who have the discipline, courage, and selflessness to earn their citizenship. According to Heinlein's characters, war isn't an aberration of human nature, but rather an evolutionary necessity. The universe is dangerous, and survival belongs to those willing to fight for it. The arachnids embody this principle. They are the perfect communist war machine. They don't question, they don't falter, and they don't hesitate to sacrifice millions of their own for the survival of the hive. Their strength is their unity, but their weakness is their lack of individual will. The Federation, in contrast, prides itself on discipline, sacrifice, and a military ethos built on voluntary service. But at the end of the day, it too relies on war as the great organizing force of its civilization. One of the most chilling aspects of the novel is how normalized this militarism is. The Federation doesn't conscript. Service is entirely voluntary. But it's also the only way to gain full political rights. Civilians live comfortable lives, but they're deliberately excluded from decision-making because, as the novel repeatedly argues, they haven't earned the responsibility of leadership. This makes for a society that is stable, functional, and efficient, but one that also operates under the unspoken assumption that war is inevitable, and governance is best left to those trained to wield power. This is where Starship Troopers really dives into the most controversial idea. Citizenship must be earned. In the world of the Federation, simply being born into society doesn't entitle you to shape it. If you want to vote, hold public office, or have a say in government, you need to prove that you're willing to sacrifice for the collective good. Not just in words, but in action.
What's going on? Hey, what's going on? War! We're going to war!
And the Federation believes that military service is the best way to test this. Throughout the book, this idea is reinforced in different ways. Johnny's father, for example, is a civilian businessman who initially sees no value in service, until the war changes everything. By the end, he enlists himself, realizing that his previous life was comfortable but meaningless in comparison to serving something larger than himself. Meanwhile, characters like Hendrik and Dillinger, the weak, undisciplined, or self-serving recruits, fail because they lack the necessary moral fiber. The system, as Heinlein presents it, is self-selecting. Those who aren't fit to lead either don't volunteer in the first place or wash out during training. It's a brutal but fascinating take on governance. The novel makes the argument that democracy, as we know it, failed because it allowed unqualified people to vote simply by virtue of being born. In contrast, the Federation system ensures that only those willing to sacrifice for the good of all have a say in how this world is run. Of course, Heinlein never really explores the potential downsides to this system. How many people volunteer simply because it's their only path to power? How many great thinkers, artists, and philosophers are denied a voice because they weren't interested in military service? And is service truly voluntary when it's the only way to full citizenship? These questions are left largely unanswered, making the novel feel less like a political debate and more like a manifesto. One of the recurring themes in Starship Troopers is that previous societies failed because they became too soft. They became too focused on individual rights and not enough on responsibility. According to the novel, the 20th century, essentially Heinlein's present day, was an era of moral decay, where crime was rampant, discipline was non-existent, and people believed that they had the right to things without working for them. The solution? A society built on public corporal punishment and strict discipline. In the world of Starship Troopers, people aren't just taught right from wrong. They're punished when they step out of line. Parents are expected to spank their children. Criminals are whipped. Even the military enforces discipline with public lashings. Johnny himself is flogged at one point for endangering his fellow soldiers. And according to the novel, this system works. The book argues that moral sense is an extension of survival instinct, that people learn best when they face real, tangible consequences for their actions. By enforcing discipline from an early age, society ensures that people develop a strong sense of duty and personal responsibility. And by making military service the gateway to citizenship, it ensures that only those who have truly internalized these values hold power. This is one of the most uncomfortable aspects of the book. The idea that people must be physically punished to develop morality is a stark contrast to modern ideas of justice and rehabilitation. And Heinlein doesn't just suggest that this approach works. He presents it as the only way to prevent moral decay. Again, there's very little room for dissenting voices. The few civilians who challenge these ideas are either dismissed outright or later come to see the light. The novel never really explores alternative methods of governance or justice, and this makes the argument feel more like a lecture than a balanced discussion. Now, whether this book is good or not, that's a complicated question. As a piece of military sci-fi, absolutely. Heinlein's writing is crisp, the world is fully realized, and the concept of power armor alone was so influential that it inspired everything from Halo to Warhammer 40k. Starship Troopers at times feels more like a manifesto than a novel. Rather than show us the world of the Terran Federation, Heinlein lectures us on why he thinks it works. And this is where the book is controversial. Just think about the ideas that he's presenting here. The idea that only those who have served in the military should have political power, that violence is the foundation of all morality, and that corporal punishment is the best way to instill discipline. These are some pretty strong takes, and Heinlein doesn't hedge. He presents them as facts within the world of the book, supported by historical examples and in-universe logic. and he doesn't give much space for opposing viewpoints. Civilians in this world are mostly portrayed as naive, weak, or ultimately dissatisfied with their own choices. And that's what makes Starship Troopers so fascinating. Even if you disagree with every single argument Heinlein makes, the book forces you to engage with them. You don't have to buy into its vision of You don't have to buy into its vision of citizenship and war, but you'll absolutely walk away thinking about it. Sorry, I just keep thinking about me saying Bork. If you're into military sci-fi, this is a must-read. It's a blueprint for so much of what came after. The way Heinlein describes the mobile infantry... Bork. I can't pronounce book. I pronounce it as Bork. Let's rewind a second. If you're into military sci-fi, this is a must-read. It's a blueprint for so much of what came after. The way Heinlein describes the mobile infantry's powered suits, their mobility, their firepower, and sheer battlefield dominance is just, it's chef's kiss perfection. But even beyond that, Starship Troopers is one of those books that challenges you. It doesn't spoon-feed you the right answer. Actually, I'd argue it gives you nothing but the wrong answer. These big, uncomfortable ideas are thrown at you and dares you to deal with them. And whether you end up agreeing with Heinlein or not, that's what great science fiction should do. Also, if you enjoy seeing how a book differs from its adaptation, reading Starship Troopers before watching Paul Verhoeven's satirical, almost anti-militaristic film is just, it's a trip. The movie mocks and exaggerates the very ideas that the book takes seriously, which makes comparing the two quite an experience. Look, Starship Troopers is not a book everyone will love. It's not warm, it's not particularly fun, and it doesn't pretend to be even morally ambiguous. It's provocative, ideological, and often rigid in its worldview. But it's also essential. Whether you see it as a celebration of duty or a cautionary tale of unchecked militarism, Starship Troopers is a landmark of science fiction. It's a book that forces you to grapple with big questions about government, war, and what it means to be a responsible member of society. And in an era where those questions are more relevant than ever, Starship Troopers still has something to say. So, have you read Starship Troopers? Do you see it as a brilliant political argument, a military sci-fi classic, or something a little more sinister? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I'd really love to hear where you stand. Now, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends, family, and even your enemies. Just no arachnids. I don't want to be killed by a giant bug. And of course, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button because every subscriber inches me one step closer to taking over the galaxies. Until next time, take care, keep reading, and I'll see you in the next one.